It's a rare occasion for me to get excited over an upcoming game's release. Usually my hype dies down in a day or two after I've analyzed the trailers and the currently known backgrounds about their developments. But sometimes, just very rarely, that doesn't happen, and I end up being genuinely excited for a game up until its release. One such case is the upcoming Metroid Dread, but another was Inti Creates' Blaster Master Zero free. Back when this game was first announced, I was absolutely pumped. I kept telling all my friends to play the first two games and immediately went to work on a series retrospective, which you should watch by the way, as a lot of the complaints in this video relate back to things I praised in that one. Link in the description. Then, once the second demo dropped, I became even more excited. However, I was also filled with cautious optimism. While I did find some of the new additions and changes to greatly enhance the experience, others left a very sore taste in my mouth. Cut forward a few months and the game finally came out and I got to play it. I've since beaten it 3 times, but was it actually good? Well, that's hard to say. So let's dial it back a bit. I'm going to assume you've seen the other video, so there will be no preemptive explanation of what a Blaster Master even is. The game takes place right after the events of Zero 2. Jason and Eve made it to Planet Sophia, and then shit immediately hits the fan. Jason gets arrested, Eve is kidnapped, and mutants have invaded the planet. Once you actually get to play the game, Jason has just managed to get his guy Sophia back and is escaping with the help of an unknown individual. Overall, this is a great setup and I really loved what they ended up doing with it later down the line. Before I get more into the story and why I find it to be a perfect end for the strategy, I'd first like to get into the gameplay. Let's go over the good changes first. The Sophia plays better than she ever has before. They absolutely nailed the weight and feel. On top of that, some of the new weapons also now use a new resource called Weapon Energy. It recharges with the same pickups and methods as the regular energy, but if you get hit after running out of it, you take double the damage. Since it functions completely independently from the main energy used for sub-weapons and passives, this adds a new layer of resource management that works wonderfully. In the overhead segments, a lot has changed. However, the best of these changes comes from Jason's moveset. His dash is now completely separate from the counter, and the counter itself now possesses a cooldown, meaning you can no longer spam it to completely destroy every boss or enemy. The dash now being separate also mitigates a major problem I had with Zero 2, as often I would attempt to quickly dash to the next room, but an enemy decides to attack right at that moment, making Jason target him, and making me run headfirst into some spikes or a pit, causing me to take damage and lose weapon points. This greatly helps in making the overhead sections keep a fast pace, and allows for the bosses and enemies to have more varied and fast movesets without being unfair. The game is also way harder than the last two, which is awesome, as I love me a good challenge, especially since all the bosses now possess multiple health bars. The map has also been greatly expanded and now features several teleportation locations and actively requires you to go back to previous areas to find new entrances to the final one. However, this comes with a fair share of problems that I will be mentioning later. As for the changes I don't like, well, there's a lot of them. For starters, the side-scrolling on foot Jason no longer takes as much falling damage, and the platforming is way more forgiving. This might not seem like a bad change to most, but I personally loved the challenge the platform Planetoids in Zero 2 had to offer, as you really had to get everything done in a perfectly calculated run. To add insult to injury, you now also have a jetpack, meaning you can jump from literally any height and be just fine. It removes the point of falling damage entirely, and now every platforming challenge, if you can even call them that, is entirely reliant on it. Overall, this change is pretty minor and doesn't affect any of the core gameplay present in the main game, but as for the other changes made, especially the ones in the overhead sections, they're anything but. The first thing that immediately stuck out to me and bothered me greatly was the new gun system. The old one was great, each upgrade gave you a new weapon, but their different attributes and uses made sure that the old ones never became obsolete, and even the base blaster had its uses. Here, instead, you have all of your weapons at once, and the upgrades instead just make them stronger and allow them to fire faster and have a greater attack radius and damage power. This sounds reasonable on paper, however it creates one very big problem. You are going to end up just picking one weapon that you'll use for 90% of the game, only ever using the others when forced to for a puzzle. And it's most likely going to be the wave beam. Not to mention that all of the level 1 shots are essentially useless. They barely do any damage, and they aren't nearly fast enough to make up for it either. Never at any point did I ever use the base blaster unless necessary, because it was simply not as good as all the others. It has the same attack speed as the phase shot, but does less damage and has a way smaller attack radius, making it essentially unnecessary. Another change that I cannot stand is that most of the dungeons now no longer yield any worthwhile reward. Sure, you may get a new weapon or upgrade every once in a while, but more often than not, you will get these new barrier shields. Basically what they are is, they let you tank hits and negate damage on both your health and weapon points, and you can stack up to 16 of them at once. Now granted, 0-1 did something similar with its one-hit negation barrier that slowly recharged over time, and it is a great system, in theory. However, the issue stems from their placement. Most dungeons just have these barriers as an end reward, and since I personally prefer fighting bosses without them, as it means I can't just tank all of their hits and spam missiles, but have to instead learn their patterns, I had no incentive to go ahead and do most of them. I know this is a me problem and I respect the people that do like them, but I imagine going through every single dungeon and then just getting some temporary health points as a reward for all your troubles seems like a waste of time. There really is no point in getting them all either, so most of these dungeons are kind of pointless. Yet another new addition I couldn't stand were the new super dimensional dungeons. While some of them were cool challenge gauntlets, most of them were nothing more than a faster way to the exit, filled with former bosses that I couldn't give less of a shit about. I eventually stopped caring about the enemies entirely and became more annoyed than I had fun traversing these dungeon alts. At least they make for really cool puzzles in the side-scrolling segments, but those are generally awesome. My biggest issue with the game, however, comes from later into it, where you have to collect a bunch of key cards to get to the final area. Not gonna show this here for the sake of spoilers. To do that, you need to return to several prior areas and collect them all, and that's a slog. It's a lazy way of forcing you to return to older areas and explore them, and I really wish they'd done it more organically. Aside from these changes and additions, the game has seen several upgrades all around. The presentation for one saw one of the biggest upgrades, now featuring a lot of new backgrounds and such that break out of the 8-bit aesthetic. My favorite new aspect to the game though is the writing. The game now features an even greater focus on story than the previous two, with a lot of interactions between Jason, the Sophia Force team, and his new co-pilot, Leibniz from the last game. Yeah, so he just casually shows up in the tank at one point and just sits there, waiting for Jason to eventually die. He constantly mocks and taunts Jason, and it's really fun to see the two of them play off of one another while Eve is busy being captured? Kane was also an awesome character. We knew of his existence since 0-1, but never enough to make out just how similar he was to his Metafight incarnation. Well, now here we are, and turns out Metafight happened exactly as it did on the NES, and he has all of the same weapons and moves he had in the NES game too. That is awesome, and I absolutely loved how they integrated it into the grander story. And this is where we get into spoiler territory. So if you haven't played this game yet, which you absolutely should do, go do so now. But if you don't care about spoilers about a space drama Metroidvania though, or already played it, feel free to keep watching. Are we good? Awesome. The final area was amazing. The lack of any given information about the time or place, the reuse of areas from the first game, and the fact that your pilot's face was never revealed and constantly shrouded by the helmet was genius. It never once occurred to me that I might not actually be playing Jason, and I kept asking myself why they'd give him the old metal attacker model Kane was using, with all the same weapons and upgrades from the NES game. The eventual reveal at the end though was masterfully pulled off, and the final fight is excellent. You essentially get the choice between an easy version of playing as Jason and getting what is essentially a guaranteed win, or playing as Kane and getting the single most challenging and best boss fight in the series. An endurance test requiring quick thinking, pattern memorization, and resource management. All while the battle music incorporates the boss themes from the NES original Blaster Master as the bass lines, and it just gets you pumped. It's awesome and made my opinion on the game go from a serviceable sequel to 0-2 to the perfect ending for this trilogy. But is the game perfect? Well, no. But it's still more than worth playing, and I highly recommend it to anyone with an affinity for space drama, retro throwbacks, Metroidvanias, and good-ass side-scrolling action. Cheers, take it easy, and have a good one.